I want to speak a little bit about what's going on in the current media news cycle about the pressures for President Joe Biden to drop out of the election race for November. I find it very disturbing at this point that the Democratic Party is basically bullying him, trying to get him to drop out at the last minute in an effort that is undoubtedly, if they get their way, going to cause a lot more damage than has already been done. With the election just a little bit over 3 months away, to try to unravel and do a total reconstruction of the ballot, which he ran pretty much uncontested in the primaries as far as any other candidates. I believe Marianne Williamson was the only other one. But he got 14 million votes. And so for these senators and celebrities to be putting this unrelenting pressure on him and putting him under a microscope for any mistake he makes, when in contrast, we have the promise of destruction of Project 2025 that will come with a new Trump administration. I just find it very shameful, and it's almost bordering on the kinds of tactics that Trump uses to bully his political nemesis figures, or whatever you want to call them, enemies, I guess. And I'm very concerned about it. Now, I want to make no bones about that. I think Vice President Harris is a wonderful vice president, and I would be more than happy to see her at the top of the ticket. However, I think realistically, with a lot of the discrimination that's been shown against her and the nasty statements that GOP figures have made about her, and unfortunately, the difficult reputation that she has in some people's minds because of disagreements about how she handled certain things as Attorney General. Just on top of the fact that she's a woman and of color, of African American and Indian heritage. I just think there are a lot of things stacked against her, and at this hour, to change it up, even though I would love to see her on the ticket, and I think she's very engaging and very effective. I don't think that's as easy done as said. And unfortunately, on top of that, a lot of these congressional members and others who keep telling Biden to drop out, they're not saying what their alternative is. And some of them, though, have said that they want an open session. And I just cannot imagine, given the infrastructure of government and how long these things take, how it would be effective at this point to do something like that, have a complete overhaul. I can't even imagine the interference that that would cause in producing the early voting ballots and even getting the final voting ballots done, because we all know that no matter what happens, if Trump doesn't win, there's going to be a lot of legal contests and saying this election is fraudulent. And so to add that into the mix is just ridiculous. And the bottom line is that, sure, Biden has shown differences as a result of his age and certain fumbles that he makes. But if you keep up with the news at all and you watch coverage, people make mistakes all the time when they're speaking in the heat of the moment and trying to remember everything. And it's only because we were taken aback by his performance at the June debate that now every single thing he says is under a microscope. But it doesn't have anything to do with the effective job that he's done since taking office in 2021. And if you look at the residuals of the destruction caused by Trump in his last administration, whether it has to do with education, whether it has to do with voting rights, whether it has to do with health care, there's just no comparison. This is an election choice of good versus evil. So, as much as I respect, even, for example, an actor such as George Clooney, who is very politically involved and clearly has done a lot on behalf of President Biden, I find the tone a little bit presumptuous to go and put an editorial in a prominent publication and make the grand statement from the heavens that Biden needs to drop out and make the best choice. And at the point the other day on social media where I saw former presidential candidate Andrew Yang's statement of a similar nature, that Biden needs to make the greatest choice he's ever done and to step down, I, it makes me question what the motives are, because it's just dividing up the Democratic Party even more. It's alienating a lot of the 14 million people who voted for President Biden in the presidential primary elections earlier this year. And meanwhile, this past week, we had at the Republican National Convention idiotic sycophants like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Carrie Lake, Nikki Haley, who clearly they're self-serving, not to mention Peter Navarro, I mean, a criminal who just came out of jail and started professing about the three branches of government and how they can come after you if they can come after him when he is clearly a criminal. I mean, just to watch them do things like the likes of Madam Taylor Greene espousing that, oh, the Democrats, wanted to ruin Easter by having a transgender recognition day on the same day. I mean, they clearly want to strip away the rights of people of this nation and cover it up by saying that we're letting in all these criminals. But it is the heart of our nation, the immigrants and the diversity makes our economy thrive. And they clearly want to do away with that so that the wealthy can have all the money that they can, and they can take away the essential freedoms and rights that we as everyday middle class citizens and those that are not middle class that are on the poverty line need to have and should have. So I'm not going to go on and on about it, but I just think that the higher ups and even the not as high profile names that keep pressing this on and on and on about Biden when he has clearly made clear that he has been an effective president and that he is still up to the job and he is surrounded by a very capable staff. So if he does have any shortcomings, there is no question that that is absolutely preferential to having Trump in the office again and to surround himself with people that will do what he wants because then they can get what they want. And that is how he runs things. It is not a democracy. He does not have any desire to do that. So before I go on further, please do your research. Look at the facts. Don't just look at the first thing that comes up in Google when you're thinking about how you want to vote in this election, but also please do not sit out the election. This is not a time for us to say, well, this person doesn't do this and this person doesn't do that, and I'm not totally happy with either of the choices. A vote for the couch, as one commentator I watched said, is a vote for Trump. So I really implore you to please look at the facts and the whole picture and not just get caught up in looking at one detail and one way that you might be thinking and try to go with that. Take a listen, because this is extremely important, and especially for the Democratic Party, that's the other equally important thing. The Republicans have been using the phrase unity in their RNC this past week, and it's meaningless. But as the Democratic Party, we need to stop falling into that trap of dividing ourselves up and breaking down the meaning of unity that our party has traditionally stood for, because it is doing far more damage than good. And that is not the kind of result that we're going to get that we need to get.